We begin today the Gemara on Daf Nun Tes Amud Beis, 3 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. Continuing halachas regarding Yayin Nesach, or the stam wine of a guy. So the Gemara, Hahu Chavite de Chamre, there was a barrel of wine, the Ishtakel le Barza, that had a spout, and the spout was removed. Also, a guy came, Idri, he jumped up, Anach Yade Elavei, and he put his hand at the hole of the barrel to stop the wine from flowing out. Rav Papa said about this. Now the guy puts his hand on the barrel, so he's stopping the wine. He's touching the wine when he's stopping it from coming out. So Rav Papa says, Kol de lahadi barze chamre aser. Only that wine that's there in that hole, in the walls of the barrel, that the guy is touching and stopping from coming out, it's only that wine which is going to be aser to drink. Only also to drink because the guy is touching it, as we learned before, that any wine that a guy touches in any way becomes immediately also to drink. But it's not also bahana because he's not agitating the wine. It's just a small hole that there's wine there in the wall of the barrel. That only that wine that the guy touches will be aser. Now the chiddush is, as we'll see from the continuation of the Gemara, that the Gemara continues, v'idach shari, the rest of the wine in the barrel is all allowed. So even though you may think that the rest of the wine in the barrel is all liquid and it's connected, it's touching that wine that the guy is touching there, that's right at the hole. But nevertheless, we don't say this. The wine that's there in the thickness of the walls of the barrel in the hole, that wine the guy is touching is aser. The other wines, which is in the interior of the barrel, which is on the side of that wine in the hole, and it's touching it, the fact that it's touching it, it's like two different wines, one in the walls of the barrel, the other in the interior of the barrel, and it's not a chibur. It's not considered to be one, and therefore the rest of the wine will all be mutter. Ve'ekedamri, another version of what Rav Papa said here is, Rav Papa said, Ada barze chamra aser. The wine that's in the hole will be aser, but not only that wine, any wine in the barrel that's from that place where the spout is and further up in the barrel is going to be aser. However, the other wine that's below this, the idach, any wine that's below this hole in the barrel, shari, will be allowed. Because according to this version, any wine that's above the hole, when the wine is flowing out of the hole, where is the wine coming from? It's coming from the wine that's above the hole. Therefore, it will be aser like the wine that's there in the thickness of the walls of the barrel where the hole is. But the wine below it doesn't rise up to flow out of this hole. That wine below will be mutter. As some Rishonim explain, even according to this version of Rav Papa, the point really remains like the first version of what Rav Papa said, that really it's only the wine which is in the thickness of the walls of the barrel by the hole that's aser. Elamai, because of the chumrah of Yayin Nesach, they added to aser also the wine that's above the hole. But that's not me'ikar adin. Really, it's there's no chibur. It's like two separate kalim, what's in the hole and what's in the interior of the barrel. Says the Gemara, Rav Yemer said, Kitanoi. This point that Rav Papa said here is a machlokes tanoi. Because we learned in the Mishnah, Chavis shenokva, a barrel that got a hole in it, beimi pia, whether it got a hole on the top of the barrel. So that means all the way on the top, that's it. There's a cover on the barrel and there's a hole there. Beimi shuleha, or it has a hole in the bottom of the barrel. Or beimi tzideha, or it has a hole on the side, on the walls of the barrel. V'noga ba'it full yaim, and a person that's at full yaim, he was in the mikveh, but it's still that day, it wasn't yet night, and therefore he still has a status of tumah. He touched the wine in any of these holes. Tmeya, all of the contents of the wine in this barrel will be tummy. Because according to the Tanakama, which actually argues on the point that Rav Papa said, once the tul yaim touches the wine that's in the hole, the wine in the hole is connected to the rest of the wine, which is in the interior of the barrel. So all of the wine becomes aser. And the same, just like it's by a tful yaim, according to the Tanakama, the same would apply regarding the halacha of the guy touching the wine. But Rabbi Yehuda says, mipia umishuleha. If the hole is in the top of the barrel or in the bottom of the barrel, and the barrel sits on the bottom of the barrel where the hole is, tameya. There, the wine, if the tful yaim touches it, the rest of the barrel, all the wine in the barrel becomes tameh. Because in this case, the chibur that there is between the wine on top or in the wine of the bottom to the rest of the wine in the barrel is a chibur. It is considered to be connected. Rashi says when you touch the wine on the top, the rest of the wine below that wine that you touched is like a basis. It's the base that the wine at the top sits on. Or if you touch the wine at the bottom also is below the rest of the wine that's above it, that is all connected as one. What's above and what's below is considered to be a chibur, that it's all one. However, when it comes to the wine that's on the side of the wine that's inside the whole mitzideh, tahira, mikan or mikan. The wine that's on the side of when there's a hole on the side of the barrel, and here the Tul Yom touched the wine, so the wine that's inside the barrel is not considered to be mechuber to the wine that's in the hole. A chibur min atzad, when the connection between the wine inside the hole and to the interior of the barrel is only from the side, that's not a chibur, so therefore only the wine there by the hole will be tomei, but the rest of the wine above and below will all be toher. Now this opinion of Rabbi Yehuda is what Rav Papa was paskening like. That the same thing regarding the yain nesach, when the guy touches the wine, Rav Papa said only the wine in the hole is us and the rest is mutter. And as I mentioned, even according to the second version of Rav Papa, the wine that's above the hole that's usher was only a chumrah midrabanan. So Rashi says we don't paskin like Rav Papa, since we see the Tanakama, the Chachamim, which is the Rabbim, disagree with Rav Papa's psak din. Rav Papa said, Oivik Adana. If a guy is the one that's with the barrel of wine, V'Yisrael akuba, and the Yid is the one that's holding a jug, and the guy is pouring him the wine into this jug. Chamra aser. So this wine will be aser. Now here in our Rashi we have it that says that this wine will be aser bahana. This is similar to the guy that's diluting the wine that a Yid has. He's pouring water and diluting it for the Yid. That there the Gemara before said that it's going to be aser because of a chumrah, similar to what we say by a nazir, that he should stay away from a vineyard. Here as well, there was a chumrah that they asered this. Now, even though our girsa and our Rashi is hana, but many Rishonim say that it's not the correct girsa, and it's supposed to be aser only b'shtia. That this is only aser to drink, but not bahana. So that's machlokes about this. My time, what's the reason for this? Because kika asi mikayach ovid kachavim kasi. Because the wine that is being poured from the barrel is coming from the kayach of the guy. So he's not touching the wine directly, but it's his kayach. And when it comes from his kayach that he pours b'chavana into the jug that the Yid holds, it's aser. Either bahana or even or only to drink. Now, if it's the opposite, Yisrael Adana, the Yid is the one that's with the barrel of wine, and the guy is holding the jug in his hands, and then the Yid is pouring from the barrel into this jug that the guy holds. Chamra shari. Here, the wine is completely allowed. But if when the guy is holding this jug in his hands, he's tilting it to the side, and in other words, he's sort of positioning it and tilting it that the wine from the barrel should enter into this jug, then aser. Then it will be aser. Dilme noga. Sorry, did I skip a line here? Yeah, let me go back. Aser. Then in such a case, when he's tilting it and positioning it, then it will be aser. And here Rashi says, either it'll be aser, because the case is that the Yisrael is filling that jug of the guy all the way to the top. So there's a chash that the guy touched this wine. Or even if he didn't fill it all the way to the top, because he's tilting this jug, so he ends up shaking this jug which has the wine inside, like the din of kishkosh, when you agitate your hands in the water, and therefore, or in the wine that is, and therefore it will make it aser. Even though he wasn't touching the wine directly, but even through the koyach of him holding and shaking it, it will be aser. Another halacha Rav Papa said, Omer Rav Papa, Papa said, the dari zika, a guy that is carrying with him a zika. A zika is a leather flask of wine that's tightly closed. The ka'az Yisrael achirei, and the Yid that's walking behind this guy. So the Yid sees exactly what the guy is doing. The Yid could see that the guy is not touching the wine. It's inside his flask and it's tied closed. However, it will depend. Malya shari. If this flask of wine, this leather flask of wine is completely full, so then the Yid is allowed to drink from it, because we know that the guy didn't touch it, the Yid sees. And also it's when it's completely full, even though the guy walks and he causes the wine inside this flask to shake around, but not when it's completely full. When it's totally full, then it doesn't shake around. The lema karshkish, it doesn't shake. Chasira, however, if this flask is not completely full, then aser. Then it's not allowed, because dilma and the karkish. Maybe the wine shakes around through the koyach of the guy, and just the fact that it shakes around through the koyach of the guy will aser it as well. Kuva malya, however, if the yid that's traveling, walking behind the guy, and what is the guy holding in his hands? He's holding a kuva, a jug of wine. So malya, if this jug of wine is full, then aser. Then the wine will be aser because dilma noga. Maybe the guy did touch this wine, even though the yid is right in the back and he's looking and he doesn't tell. It doesn't seem to him that the guy touched the wine, but because it's completely full, it is possible that he did touch it. Chaseda, however, if the wine in this jug it's not full to the top, then shari. Then it's allowed loy noga because he did not touch the wine. And not only are we not concerned about the fact that he did not touch the wine, Rashi adds, we're also not concerned that the guy is shaking around this jug that's open, that he's traveling with, because if it's an open, uncovered jug and the guy is traveling with it, he's not going to want to shake it around in order for it not to spill. So therefore, there's no chash that it was shaken around by the guy, there was no chash that he touched it, and therefore it's going to be muter. Rav Ashi Omar, regarding the first example of the leather flask that has the wine in it, Rav Ashi says, Zika, so this leather flask, Bei Malya, whether it's completely full, or Ben Chaseira, or even if it's not completely full, Shari. Either way, it's going to be muter. My timer, what's the reason? Because Ein Derech Nisuch Bekach. This is not the way Nisuch Hayayin is done, even if in the case where it's not full, completely full, the guy is causing it to shake around through his kayach, but nevertheless, in a closed flask, this is not the way Nisuch Hayayin is done. Nisuch Hayayin is either the guy pours it, or he sticks his hand inside and touches it directly, or maybe even indirectly, but inside the wine, and he agitates the wine, but not in this closed flask that the guy causes it to shake around. So therefore, it's going to be mutter. Sagt the Gemara, another case, Matzarte Zaire, or Matzre that is, Matzre Zaire. When you have a wine press that is made with a Zaire, that's a heavy board of wood. Meaning, and there are some wine presses that before you press it, you step on it with your feet, and that's how the wine comes out. Or you have the wine press that you don't step on it directly, but you place these heavy boards, and that's what presses the wine. So now this kind of wine press that a guy stepped on the boards to press the wine, Rav Papa Shari. Rav Papa says that this wine is allowed, and Rav Ashi, V'teimer Rav Shimi Bar Ashi, Osar. Rav Shimi Bar Ashi said that this would be Osar. Again, over here, whether we're talking about mutter or Osar Bahana or only Bishtiya depends on the two girsas I mentioned before in the Rashi. So the Gemara explains what's the exact case of this kind of wine press that heavy boards are used to press the wine. If it's the kayach of the guy, which means that you have the boards that are placed onto the grapes, and the guy goes ahead and steps directly on these boards that are on the grapes, nobody would disagree that in such a case it would be aser, since it's directly the kayach of the guy, although he's not touching the wine itself, but it's the kayach of the guy. So everybody would agree that in this case it would be aser. Ki pligi, when is there a machlokes b'koyach koychay? When there is a secondary koyach here, which means the case is that we're talking about, as Rashi describes, a kind of wine press where there are boards, but the guy does not step on the boards that are on the grapes. You have these boards that are screwed into this center piece that then you go and twist around the board until you tighten it, and it gets tighter and tighter, and that will press the wine. So the guy is never stepping directly on this board on this heavy board that's on the grapes. What the guy is doing is he's just twisting around the board, and then it causes the board to go down and to tighten on the grapes. So that's koyach koyach. It's a secondary koyach. Here is the machlokes whether the wine would be aser. Others say the opposite. If it's the secondary koyach from the guy where he's twisting around the board on this center piece, that it goes down and tightens, everybody would agree that in this case it's allowed. The argument is when it's directly the koyach of the guy that's stepping on the boards on the grapes, will it be aser then? That's the case of the argument. There was a case where it was only the secondary koyach of the guy, and v'asar Rav Yaakov min Nahar Pakait. And Rav Yaakov from Nahar Pakait said that even in this case the wine would be aser as well. So the Gemara, there was a barrel of wine, the ifka, that it burst la'archa in its length, meaning from the top to the bottom. The barrel wine burst. So what happens? It breaks apart and the wine is flowing out. This guy jumped up and chavka, and he grabbed it, or he pressed it together to save the wine inside. So now the guy is the one that's preserving the wine inside with his pressure by holding it together. Sharye Rafram bar Papa v'iteimer Avonu bereid Rav Yeshua lezavuni lo evekechavim. So Rafram bar Papa or Avonu bereid Rav Yeshua allowed this wine only for hana to sell to a guy, but not to drink from it, because in this case, when he's pressing together the wine, it's like the guy is touching the wine itself, even though he's only touching the barrel. But when you touch through something else, it's like you're touching the wine itself. Over here, without the guy holding it together, the barrel would break apart and the wine would flow out. So it's like the guy is holding the wine itself together. So it's going to be aser b'shtiyah, he's touching the wine, so it's aser to drink, but it's not aser b'hana. That's the case where it broke from the top to the bottom in its length. So b'hanamili the pakal orcha, when it broke in its length. Avol pusiye, if it broke in its width, then, and the guy came and pressed down the barrel to keep the wine inside, afila b'shtiyah shari, then the wine inside would be allowed even to drink. My timer, what's the reason? Maise levene ka'avid. Because what the guy is doing, holding down the barrel that it should remain, the wine should remain inside, he's not really the one that's keeping the wine inside. The top of the barrel that lies on the bottom part of the barrel, it's pretty safe inside. He's just pressing it to maintain it there, that it shouldn't come out. So that's different than the case where it's split in its length from the top to the bottom and the guy is holding it together. Without the guy, the wine is gone. So it's mamish like he's touching the wine itself. In this case, though, it's just like putting a heavy brick on top to maintain it there. In such a case, it'll be mutter. There was a case with a guy, the shtakach, that he was found that he was standing in a wine press. And the question was, what's with the wine that's there in this wine press? Amar Ravashi, so Ravashi says, if there's leftover wine in this wine press, that it's moist enough that if you touch it, you get wet from the wine, and you get wet enough that if then you touch something else, you'll cause it to become wet from this wine. Then we're chayshish that the guy touched this, and the wine is aser, and therefore boy hadoche, it has to be rinsed out, or boy niguv, and then it has to be dried properly. Rashi here brings, we're going to learn this later in the Masechta, that there's a process of how this is done. It has to be done with putting ashes on it, and then water, and then ashes again, and then it has to be dried, as we'll see later. But v'iloi, if you don't have any moisture in the wine to this degree, then bahadoche ba'alme sagile, and then just to rinse it off will be enough. A guy that's found, a habar shel yayin, that is, a guy that's found standing near a pit of wine. And you don't know, could you trust the guy that he didn't touch this wine, or maybe he did touch it? So if this guy has a loan that the yid owes him, then aser. Then the wine in this pit will be aser. Because I say the guy may go ahead and touch this wine and take for himself, because he says this yid owes me money. So he's not afraid of being caught as a thief taking from this wine. However, if the yid does not owe this guy anything, then mutter. Then the wine is mutter, because we're not concerned that the guy touched the wine and took from the wine, because he's afraid. He's afraid to take. It's not his. He doesn't want to be caught as a ganav. Dr. Mishnah, if a guy falls into a pit of wine, and he came out, or he measured the wine in a barrel with a stick or with a straw, hit his atzira, or he took off a bee or a hornet that fell into the wine, bekana, with a reed, or the barrel of wine was fermenting and there's the bubbling on the top of the wine, and he banged it with his hand in order to get rid of the bubbles there. In all of these cases, there was an incident that happened, and they said that this wine is mutter bahana, could be sold, but it's aser to drink, because the guy touched the wine, whether directly or even indirectly, but he touched the wine. And even if it was with no kavana at all to use for Avoda Zara, so he fell in, or that he was measuring it, or to get rid of a bee, or just to get rid of the bubbles, for all of this, it's not considered to be an issue of yayin nesach, but the issur of drinking from this wine when the guy touches still applies. Rab Shimon says that this wine is completely mutter, even to drink from it. Rab Shimon's opinion is that any time the wine is not asur b'hana because of a connection to yayin nesach, there's no separate isser of drinking from it. The wine is going to be mutter to drink. As the Gemara will explain, Rab Shimon holds either the wine is asur and it's completely asur b'hana, or it's mutter and it's mutter even to drink. Not if a guy took a barrel, he threw this barrel into a pit of wine, and he was angry when he threw this barrel there. This story happened, and they were machshir this wine, that you're allowed to drink from this wine. Okay, the Gemara will explain this case. Shmuel said regarding the first halacha of the Mishnah, when it said that the guy was standing near the pit of wine, that if the Yid owed this guy money, then there's a problem. He may have taken from this wine, he may have touched this wine. So Shmuel said, it's only in a case where the guy has a loan, the Yid owes him money to pay him up specifically from this barrel of wine. Meaning when he borrowed the money, the Yid made up with the guy, I'll pay you specifically here from this barrel of from this pit of wine. This is what's called an apaitiki. That right from here is where my payment will be to you, and therefore it's only in this case that we say that the guy may have touched this wine. But if the Yid owed him money b'chlal, and he didn't make up with him that the payment is from here, the wine is still mutter. The guy is still afraid to touch the wine without permission. Ravashi said, the point that Shmuel said could also be proven from the Mishnah. This is from the next Mishnah on Daf Samach Aleph. The Tanan, the Mishnah there says, a yid that purifies a wine press of a guy. And basically the yid comes into the wine press of the guy and tells him, I want to produce wine here and then sell it to a yid. So it has to be cleared out and cleaned out, and we're going to purify it, that I can press wine here. And then we'll sell it to a yid and we'll share the income. That's the case we're talking about. So now what happened? Where does he store the wine? He stores the wine in the guy's possession, in the guy's house. Now, so there could be two options over here, how the yid gives the money part of the income of this wine. So if the case is that the guy writes to the yid, his kabalti mimcha mois. It's like you gave me already your share of the income of this wine, or my share, that is. The guy writes that it's as if I got already the pay for the amount that's owed to me for this income, which means as follows: if the guy tells the yid, you go ahead and sell the wine, you don't have to give me my half of the income in advance. You take the wine whenever you want and sell. And then later you owe me half of the income. In such a case, mutter. The wine that was left to be stored in the house of a guy will be mutter. We're not chayshish that the guy tampered or touched this wine. Aval, and there has to also be a case, as Rashi brings, it has to be a case where the wine was sealed properly or with a key, that we're not afraid that the guy touched it, as we had earlier in the Masechta about this. Aval im yirtze, but if the case is different, if the guy tells the yid im yirtze Yisrael, if the yid wants to go and take wine to sell, the guy doesn't allow the yid to take from this wine until he gives him in advance his part of the income from this wine, the profit of this wine. So now the guy is basically holding this wine as a mashkin for the deal between them, for his amount that he's going to get from this wine. This is something that happened in the place Beis Shan, v'asru. And the Chachamim said that it's asr because here there's a concern that the guy touched the wine itself. So the Gemara says, here we see the point that Shmuel said, the reason why we say that we're afraid that the guy went ahead and touched the wine is because the deal between them is that the yid is not allowed to take the wine without first giving the guy his half, his money. So in such a case, because the wine itself is like a mashkin for this amount of money that he owes him, so we're afraid that the guy will actually tamper with the wine. But if it's a case where the yid owes the guy money, whatever income will come from this sale, the yid has to give the guy half of the money. But he doesn't have to give it to him in advance. The wine is not being kept as a mashkin for this. He's going to pay him later on. Shadi. So then it's allowed. We're not afraid that the guy will tamper with the wine itself, because this is not a loan or money that the yid owes, that the wine itself is a mashkin for this. It's separately that later he's going to pay him for this, and then it's allowed. So Shema Mina, this proves similar to the point that Shmuel said regarding our Mishnah here, when a guy was standing near a pit of wine by the property of a yid, and if it's milval oisayayin be'inon, The only time that we're going to be concerned that the guy touched the wine that's inside this pit is if this is a loan that the deal was that the guy is going to get paid from this very wine here itself. Not stam, any loan that's not directly connected, that the payment will be from this wine. Shema Mina, this proves the point that Shmuel said. Taisus here points out that this case is not exactly the same as in the Mishnah. The case of this Mishnah that the Gemara brought, it's the next Mishnah here. There it's talking about the wine which is in the house of a guy. Here we're talking about a pit that's in the possession of a Yid. And also, in the Mishnah there, we're talking about closed, sealed barrels of wine. In our Mishnah, it's talking about open pit of wine. There's a much bigger chash that the guy touched it. So Taisa says these 2 points go together. In our Mishnah, it's talking about, on one hand, the open pit of wine, but it's in the possession of the Yid. It's in the Yid's property. So the guy is afraid to touch it. And in the Mishnah later, it's talking about the wine that's in the guy's house, but on the other hand, though, it's closed wine. So therefore, the Gemara compares the two. The Mishnah said, Nafal abar va'ala, if the guy fell into the wine, a barrel of wine or a pit of wine, and he came out, then the wine will be allowed. Or the Mishnah says it'll be allowed to be sold, that is, hana, but not to drink. Rav Papa says, L'shano ela sha'ala meis. That's only if the guy came out and he was dead. Or as some Rishonim add, whether he came out dead, or he came out and he didn't have his senses with him. Aval alachai, but if he came out alive and healthy, then asr. Then you will not be allowed to sell this wine either. It's not only asr because of the guy coming in contact with the wine, but it will be completely asr like yayin nesach. My timer, what's the reason? Rav Papa says, because when the guy's life is saved after he fell into this pit of wine, the domi alei kiyayim. For the guy, it's like a holiday, a celebration. So when he comes out of the wine, so then he's thinking about his Avoda Zara, and he may do an action to be meshachshech in the wine for the sake of his Avoda Zara, so there's still a chash of yayin nesach. So the Gemara, it said in the Mishnah that madadai bekana, if it was measured, the guy comes and he measures the wine with a reed. Kol elu, all these examples of the guy touching or being in contact with the wine for other reasons. Shalei b'chavana for yayin nesach. Haya ma'aseh, these happened. Va'amru, and the Chachamim said yimacher, that it can be sold. It's also to drink, but it can be sold. But Rab Shimon mater, and Rab Shimon says that it's completely mutter to drink as well. Amar Avoda Barava said yenuchaloi le Rab Shimon brachas al reishei. Brachas should rest on the head of Rab Shimon. Why? Because Kishuhu mater, regarding the wine, when he says it's mutter, mater afilu b'shtiyah, he says it's allowed even to drink. Kishuhu aiser, and when he says it's aser afilu b'hana, he says that it's aser even to have any hana. So therefore, by him, things are clear. Hana and shtiyah is in the same category. Amar Rab Chia bereid Abbe bar Nachmeni, Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Rav. Others say Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Zeiri, Halacha Rab Shimon. That we paskin like Rab Shimon in this Mishnah. Iked another version is Amar Rav Chisda, Amali Abba Bar Chanan, Hachi Amar Zeiri. Zeiri told me that Halacha Rab Shimon, that the Halacha is like Rab Shimon. But the Gemara concludes Ve'ein Halacha Rab Shimon. We do not paskin like Rab Shimon. Okay, the last point the Mishnah said, Notal Chavis V'Zarka B'Chamasai. A guy took a barrel of wine and threw it with anger, L'bayr, into this pit of wine from a Yid. Ze'o Yamaisa, this is an incident that happened, Ve'Chshirai. And they said that this wine is mutter even to drink. Okay, so first the Gemara brings a statement of Rav Ashi, then it'll come back to the Pshat in the Mishnah. Amar Rav Ashi said, here's the rule regarding a guy coming in contact with wine. Kol shebezav tamei. Anything that by a zav, which is a person that had a seminal emission and he's tamei, so if anything that by him will be tumah, so regarding a guy that comes in contact with wine, will also cause the yayin to be yayin nesach. Kol shebezav toy, but in any case where by a zav it'll be toy, by the kechavim ena is a yayin nesach. So similar by a guy that touches the wine, it'll not be yayin nesach. So what is he coming to say? That by a zav, the halacha is whether he comes in contact with something directly or even indirectly. If he's holding a stick in his hand or a reed and he touches the wine, it makes it aser. So similar benigay to a guy, whether he touches the wine directly or indirectly, he's holding a stick in his hand and he touches it, it'll be like he touched it directly and it'll be aser. That's the comparison that it's coming to say here, as opposed to if the zav throws something at something, then it's not going to be aser. It has to be that he's holding a stick in his hands, and that's how he's making contact to whatever it is. So here as well, if a guy throws something at wine, there's no problem of yayin nesach. That's the main point that Rav Ashi is coming to say. Tosfos points out he's not coming to say that the halachas of a zav and the halachas of wine are compared for all halachas, because there's a clear halacha that we learned before, or Namar Aleph, that will be different by yayin nesach and by the zav. That is the case that Rav Ashi said on Amar Aleph, where the guy is carrying this leather flask of wine in it, and Rav Ashi says that even if the wine shakes around inside through the movement of this guy, it'll still be mutter. It's not the derech of yayin nesach this way. But by a zav, that's not the case. By a zav, there's a din of hesed, that if he causes something to move, shake around, it'll be aser. But the main point that Rav Ashi is coming to say over here is that throwing something, that will not make it tameh or aser for yayin nesach. So now we come back to what it said in our Mishnah. So Rav Huna asked Rav Ashi the Shaila, or others are going to say Rav Huna asked Rav Ashi the Shaila, not tell us a chavis v'zaka b'chamasil bar. The Mishnah says if a guy threw a barrel out of anger, he threw it into this pit. This is a story that happened in Beishan, and he said that the wine is kosher to drink. So what do we see in our Mishnah? There's a detail that the Mishnah said, and that is b'chamasai in. If the guy threw the wine out of anger, so then I say that the wine will be mutter to drink. But shalai b'chamasai, but if he threw the wine, the barrel that is, he threw the barrel into this pit of wine, it was no anger, then loy, then it's going to be a problem. Why will it be a problem? Because then I say that it came from the guy. Not only if he's coming in contact with something that he's holding in his hand, a stick, and touching the wine, but even throwing any item, in this case a barrel at the wine, it'll also make it aser. Rav Ashi said that in such a case, just like by a zav, it will not make it tameh, by the yayin nesach it doesn't make it aser either. And says the Gemara, Hasam, in the case of Rav Mishnah, it's not exactly a case where he's throwing it. When it said in the Mishnah Zarka, it means the ka'azal minei uminei, that this guy is rolling this barrel. He's rolling the barrel until it reaches the pit and it falls into the pit. So over here is where the Mishnah says that if the guy rolled the barrel into the pit, and according to Rashi, at the last moment, when he rolled it and it rolled into the pit, he's not touching the barrel when it's making contact with the wine in the pit, but he rolled it into the pit. So in such a case, if the guy does it without anger, so then we're going to be concerned that maybe the guy did come in contact with this barrel as he's rolling it into the pit. But in a case where the guy did it with anger, in such a case, we're not going to be chayshish that the guy touched the barrel, he's just rolling it quickly with anger, and in such a case, we're not going to be chayshish that the guy touched it, and therefore it's going to be mutter. So it's a different kind of a case over here. We're not talking about throwing, we're talking about a case where the guy is rolling the barrel of wine into the pit.